Step into our realm of empathy and understanding, where we navigate the intricate nuances of relationships and nurture connections that stand the test of time. In spite of being a mere 35 years old, Mason Reed embodied unwavering values. He held the esteemed position of owning a series of gas stations that dotted the expanse of the northern state. This network of gas stations served as a steadfast wellspring of income for Mason. His life appeared impeccable, barring a persistent complication rooted in a specific station. Baffled and intrigued, Mason confronted the enigma that plagued this particular establishment. His commitment to generously compensating the staff and accommodating their time-off requirements stood as an undeniable fact. Nevertheless, a confounding conundrum persisted. This gas station continued to attract unfavorable reviews and found itself incessantly targeted by petty thieves. It's worth noting that the objects of theft were not fuel, but rather merchandise from the store. Mason undertook efforts to meticulously review the security footage, yet the thefts remained shrouded in an air of subtlety or complexity that eluded immediate detection. The possibility of employee involvement cast a shadow, although no discernibly suspicious conduct arose from customer interactions. Remaining cautious and measured, Mason resisted the urge to hastily level accusations at his employees in the absence of concrete proof. Even amid the discomforting circumstances, he tenaciously upheld his composure. One weekend, a basketball game brought Mason together with his longtime companion, Noah Jenkins. Mason was known to seamlessly interweave business pursuits with leisurely diversions, often merging formal discussions with moments of relaxation. Once upon a time, Noah held the role of Mason's business adversary. Preceding Mason's venture into the gas industry, he managed a tire emporium. Positioned on opposing sides of the same street, their respective tire stores engaged in a competitive dance. Their camaraderie initially thrived, but with the surge of patrons flocking to Mason's establishment, Noah embarked on an assertive mission to outshine his rival. In the blink of an eye, their amicable association transformed into a spirited rivalry, resulting in a suspension of all communication. However, a moment of clarity struck Mason like a bolt of lightning. Amid the intensity of the rivalry, he discerned that his principles were slipping through his grasp. Triumph should not come at the cost of forsaking an erstwhile friendship. Thus, a brilliant idea took root, a transformation in their marketing approach. Mason opted to champion integrity and recognize the abundance of opportunities available. He sought to shift away from unfavorable comparisons and instead direct their focus towards individual strengths. The revised marketing strategy accentuated their offerings, designed to cater to customer needs and usher them confidently into the future. The spotlight shone on their impeccable customer service and competitive pricing. Most significantly, Mason embraced the notion that he and Noah could cater to distinct clienteles without diminishing one another. Out of this evolved perspective, Mason's rapport with Noah flourished into an enduring friendship. In fact, it was Noah who initially floated the idea of Mason venturing into the gas station realm. Following their basketball showdown, a serene coffee shop set the stage for their discussions on multifarious subjects. Among these topics, Mason unburdened himself to Noah regarding the perplexing phenomenon of shoplifting afflicting one of his gas stations. After careful consideration, Noah proposed a simple yet ingenious solution: why not draft employees from their other stores? It was a suggestion that held promise. Mason experienced a moment of astonishment initially. "What do you mean?" he inquired, seeking clarification from Noah. A thoughtful response followed. "Consider this," Noah expounded. "You've got flourishing stores and capable managers overseeing them, correct?" Mason nodded in gradual comprehension. "Well," Noah continued, "why not tap into their expertise? Bring them in to address the issue and streamline operations." The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together for Mason. "But wait," Mason interjected, voicing his concern, "won't transferring effective managers jeopardize the other branches?" Noah acknowledged the valid worry before offering his counterpoint. "Absolutely, I understand your concern," he affirmed. However, let's look at the potential advantages. Firstly, you're tackling a persisting problem head-on. Secondly, you're providing another employee the chance to showcase their managerial skills. With Noah's persuasive counsel resonating, Mason made his decision. He handpicked a cadre of accomplished employees along with a proficient manager from his successful branches and orchestrated their transfer to the problematic station. While some hesitated or declined the offer, the profoundly dedicated individuals accepted the opportunity without reservation. Astonishingly, the issues plaguing the station underwent swift resolution. Positivity surged with favorable feedback, and a sense of order was reinstated. The station, once a nexus of challenges, now hummed with operational efficiency, subsequently boosting profits. Though shoplifting hadn't been entirely eradicated, its frequency had significantly diminished. Nonetheless, the tide soon ushered in a new challenge. Among the transferees was a gas pump attendant named James. After spending a few months at the station, he expressed an earnest desire to either return to his former post or contemplate resignation. Surprisingly, 2 of his colleagues opted for the latter as well. Intrigued by this unfolding scenario, Mason embarked on a decision to personally investigate. He took the wheel to the gas station and, extending an invitation, beckoned James to a private conversation within the confines of the back office. "Why the inclination to return to your former post?" Mason inquired, seeking insight. His curiosity lay in James' decision to seek reversion despite the upgraded compensation. James waved his hand dismissively, voicing his sentiment. "I genuinely value the raise, sir," he responded, "but no monetary figure can equate to the toll of stress. The relentless critique has taken its toll. Whether it's about my attire, my service, or even how I handle the pump." A rueful expression swept over James as he continued, "It doesn't cease. If it revolved solely around the job, I could withstand it. But it's transcended into my personal life as well. Just the other day, when my wife visited and I stepped aside to converse with her, I was reproached for not relegating family matters to non-work hours. I appreciate everything, sir, but I find it unbearable to collaborate with these individuals." James beseeched Mason for a transfer back or, as an alternative, the freedom to seek employment elsewhere. Mason exhaled deeply, signifying a mixture of understanding and contemplation. He could empathize with James' perspective. The heart of the problem seemed to lie with the manager, an individual who displayed competence, thoroughness, and meticulousness in their role, yet wielded a management style that seemed to instigate discomfort among the team. However, Mason also recognized that Daniel was a catalyst for workplace discord. While her professional prowess was undeniable, her proficiency in interpersonal dynamics and leadership appeared to waver. Left grappling with a predicament, Mason pondered the best course of action. He formulated a plan to approach Daniel in a cordial manner to discuss the matter, albeit the very thought of it elicited a sardonic grin from Mason. Daniel, a woman of a distinct vintage, was renowned for her peculiar personality. Her uniqueness, however, had contributed to James, the gas attendant, storming off and eventually resigning from his station duties. This upheaval posed a fresh challenge for Mason to address. Not only did he need to locate a replacement, even if on a temporary basis, but he also had to secure a long-term employee. Stepping outside, his attention was drawn to a young woman standing nearby. Her garments showed signs of wear, and her delicate frame suggested the weight of her struggles. Evidently caught in introspection, she lingered around the gas station, showing no intent to drive or make any purchases. In a sudden surge of inspiration, Mason conceived a daring notion. Approaching the young woman, he inquired, "Pardon me, do you require assistance?" Startled, her gaze lifted to meet his, her expression subsequently softening into a smile. "I apologize," she responded, "I was just contemplating the possibility of finding some employment nearby." Mason's enthusiasm soared. "That's wonderful. "What sort of work are you seeking?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. With sincerity, she replied, "To be honest, I'm a quick learner and willing to tackle any job." Mason took a brief moment to consider her. "Do you possess the necessary documentation?" he inquired, mindful that her situation might be less straightforward. She hesitated, then affirmed, "Yes, though recently I've been dealing with some challenges." Recognizing her hesitation, Mason interjected kindly, "Come with me." He led her back towards the building, a surge of anticipation guiding his steps. The young woman followed, and as they reached the office, Mason requested that she wait by the entrance. He proceeded into Daniel's office, acutely aware of the office's collective gaze tracking his movements. During her tea break, Daniel found herself choking slightly on her beverage as she rose from her seat. "I apologize for that," she uttered, motioning for the guest to enter. Daniel, endowed with a full figure, had pursued several diets and exercise regimens, only to find herself gaining more weight than losing it. Curiously, Mason had always connected plump individuals with kindness, but Daniel deviated from this notion. Paradoxically, her growing size seemed to correlate with heightened irritability. Some conjectured that her perpetual single status and wholehearted commitment to her work might contribute to her discontent. When questioned about her unmarried status, her reply was simple: finding someone who could handle her was a daunting task. With an air of indifference, Daniel addressed the matter at hand. "Henry Morgan, the rumors surrounding the gas station are of no concern to me. I'm here to discuss another gas jockey resigning." Her surprise was evident. "Who can fathom what goes through their minds?" she mused. "Perhaps they've inhaled one petrol fume too many." Mason brushed off her casual response. He acknowledged her indispensability to the station's functioning, which eliminated termination as an option. "Henry Morgan, today's not the day to delve into that matter," Mason stated firmly. "But there's a new recruit waiting outside. If she leaves within a month, I'll need to dig deeper." Daniel seemed taken aback. "A girl?" she questioned, skepticism evident. "We need someone sturdy to handle pumping gas, not a girl." Mason's tone grew resolute. "I believe you're stepping over boundaries, Mrs. Owen." "It's Michael who's on duty today," Daniel mentioned, suppressing any inclination to lay blame on Noah for asserting herself. From her perspective, her tireless effort and unwavering commitment formed the bedrock of the station's triumph. She firmly believed that without her, Mason's enterprise would have crumbled long ago. Mason, a sagacious leader, allowed his team space for self-governance. While replacements weren't hard to come by, he placed great importance on nurturing a cohesive work environment. The freshly on-board recruit, Ellie, displayed swift acumen. Within an hour, she grasped her role and immediately immersed herself in tasks. Prior to Mason's departure, Ellie had efficiently cleared the recycling bins scattered around the station. Before leaving, Mason engaged Ellie privately. "Take down my number and text me your clothing and shoe sizes," he advised. "I'll arrange a uniform for you. And remember, if you encounter any trouble with the manager, don't hesitate to contact me." Ellie responded with a grateful smile. "Thank you, I've dealt with tougher bosses before. I can handle it." Mason glanced at the new employee with an air of surprise. Ellie exuded a competence beyond what her appearance might suggest. Over the subsequent 3 weeks, Mason's schedule was packed, preventing him from visiting the branch. Although concerned, Daniel's succinct yet upbeat updates provided a measure of reassurance that operations were proceeding smoothly. Eventually, seizing a moment of respite, he chose to make an unannounced visit to the branch. He situated his car a short distance away, opting to observe from within before revealing his presence. A vehicle glided into the gas station, and Ellie promptly advanced towards it. She had undergone a transformation. The uniform sat well on her, accentuating her form. The previously worn visage of struggle was replaced with newfound vibrancy. Ellie radiated with smiles, unveiling a set of now gleaming teeth. Mason disembarked from his car and approached her stealthily from behind. "Hello, Ellie," he greeted. Taken aback, she pivoted, swiftly recognizing him. Readjusting herself, she stepped forward, warmly returning the salutation. "How's everything going?" Mason inquired. "Is Daniel treating you well?" A genuine smile graced his lips. "Absolutely," Ellie affirmed, her demeanor exuding positivity. "She's quite a charming lady." Mason appeared somewhat taken aback. "Really? You find Henry Morgan charming?" he probed, a hint of disbelief lacing his words. "Yes, she's been quite nice," Ellie insisted. Mason regarded Ellie skeptically, almost as if questioning her sanity. Nonetheless, he maintained his focus on her and strolled deliberately towards the office. Ellie was left surprised by his reaction, wondering if she had inadvertently misspoken. After Mason vanished behind the office door, Ellie returned to her duties. Within the confines of the office, Daniel's voice resonated with reprimand. "What on earth are you two doing, standing around while Ellie attends to the coffee machine?" she scolded the operators, her finger pointing towards a coffee spill. The operators hung their heads in remorse, acknowledging their error in allowing a customer to impose on Ellie for the cleanup. As one of the operators attempted to interject, Daniel swiftly quelled the attempt, her tone laced with a threat: "Should this happen again, the responsibility of cleaning the entire area will fall on your shoulders." Just then, the operator's gazes caught sight of Mason, prompting Daniel to pivot. At the sight of Mason, her scowl melted into a smile. "Mr. Reed, I had thought you'd forgotten about us," she quipped, her demeanor markedly warmer. "It's good to see you." Mason was not merely surprised, he almost faltered, taken aback. He had never witnessed Daniel smile before. Another revelation came to him: she appeared slightly thinner. "How have you been, Henry Morgan?" Mason inquired, his gratitude for Ellie apparent in his tone. As he settled into a chair in her office, a sense of bewilderment washed over him. "I can hardly believe it. Is that really you, Henry Morgan?" he exclaimed. In response, Daniel burst into laughter. "Indeed, it is. No need for alarm, Mr. Reed." She paused, collecting her thoughts before continuing. "Ellie and I had quite a showdown on her first day. I was so furious I contemplated firing her and resigning myself." She exhibited an excess of confidence. An inexplicable turn of events ensued, as Daniel recounted. However, astonishingly, we ended up talking throughout the night. Her life story is a narrative of hardship that words cannot do justice. It's beyond description. Regardless, we've forged a strong friendship. She's astute, and I would venture to say she could replace anyone here. Even you." Mason's astonishment was palpable. "Precisely what I'm alluding to. She possesses a solid education." The declaration left Mason incredulous. "Education? What sort of educational background could she have?" he queried, taken off guard. Daniel's response was an enigmatic grin. "You'll soon find out," she teased, leaving Mason shaking his head. "All right, that sounds promising. Henry Morgan, I've brought the invitations for the company's New Year's party. Could you find out who should remain on duty?" Mason requested. "Of course. Thank you, Mr. Reed," Daniel replied. Mason's company was renowned for hosting grandiose company parties, leaving no expense spared. Held in opulent venues and accompanied by employee bonuses, these gatherings were a tradition he upheld. This year was no exception. The company's prosperity translated into soaring profits, a testament to Mason's commitment to employee contentment. "Would you mind getting me a cup of coffee, Henry Morgan?" Mason inquired, settling into her office. "Certainly, I'll be back shortly." Within moments, a plate of cookies and a steaming cup of coffee adorned Mason's workspace. He observed that Daniel had poured a cup for himself as well, though he abstained from partaking in the cookies. Mason's eyebrows arched in surprise, prompting a chuckle from Daniel. "Please don't look so astonished, Mr. Reed," Daniel quipped. "Yes, I'm back on a diet. Ellie recommended it. It's an entirely new experience for me, and I'm sticking with it. And let's not even delve into my past penchant for sweets." As Mason left the gas station, he was more perplexed than upon his arrival, particularly regarding Ellie. She remained an enigma. At the time of her hiring, he had intended for Ellie to serve as a temporary solution until a more reliable replacement could be secured. His expectation was that once she received her initial paycheck, she would vanish, possibly in pursuit of alcohol or drugs. However, observing Ellie's unwavering dedication in her tasks prompted Mason to reconsider his initial assumptions. "All right, whatever's happening here, if things are proceeding well, that's excellent," he reassured himself. The subsequent months flowed smoothly, marked by an accumulation of positive reviews for the gas station. Notably, Noah's service eclipsed even that of other successful establishments. An abrupt halt befell a recent series of shoplifting incidents. Eventually, he managed to apprehend the perpetrator, a disgruntled former employee nursing a grudge against manager Daniel. Mason surmised that Ellie's arrival had ushered in a positive shift in the station's atmosphere, a transformation that had evidently affected this ex-employee. Opting not to pursue legal action, Mason discreetly rehired the individual for a role at another branch. On a certain day, a roster of attendees for an imminent company party landed on Mason's desk. A pause ensued as he spotted Ellie's name on the list. Someone like her, barely making ends meet, probably doesn't possess formal attire, he mused silently. "Well, that's not exactly my concern, I suppose." As the day of the party dawned, the guests started arriving early. While Mason recognized a portion of the attendees, several faces were unfamiliar. Discerning the women amid the crowd posed a challenge, as they were unrecognizable in their elegant ensembles, far removed from their customary uniforms. The restaurant brimmed with attendees, and Mason engaged with his familiar staff in casual conversations as the formal proceedings drew closer. His gaze repeatedly strayed to the main entrance, an inexplicable anticipation building within him. His thoughts oscillated between pondering Ellie's attire and whether she would attend at all. Briefly diverting his attention to converse with someone, Mason was caught off guard by a voice from behind him. As he pivoted, words momentarily failed him, sheer astonishment rendered him silent. "Hello?" he managed, his voice laced with incredulity. The woman before him was nothing short of breathtaking. Her beauty appeared to transcend the confines of reality. An air of sophistication emanated from her hairstyle, her makeup was impeccable, and her dress exuded opulence. The attire itself seemed to have commanded a small fortune, and Mason couldn't help but draw a whimsical parallel between its cost and that of a fuel truck. "Do you recognize me?" she inquired, breaking the silence. In truth, he didn't. He was certain he had never encountered this young woman before. Someone of her remarkable presence would have been etched indelibly in his memory. His gaze briefly shifted to Daniel, who was wearing a wide grin, her elation evident. The woman uttered a few words, followed by a nod directed at Mason. Then, as if struck by lightning, realization dawned upon him. "Ellie. Is that really you?" he blurted, his disbelief palpable. The situation felt surreal, it seemed inconceivable. A burst of laughter escaped the woman's lips. "Well, you know, anything is possible," she responded playfully. Mason blinked, attempting to reconcile the dazzling vision of Ellie before him with the memory he retained. His mind grappled with the transformation. "But how? I mean, how do you explain this metamorphosis?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "You insisted you needed a job and were prepared to take anything. I had assumed your life was marred by adversity to a degree that bouncing back seemed unlikely." Ellie's laughter resonated once again. I apologize for the perplexity. I would have shared my story, but you never asked, she confessed. Intrigued, Mason prodded further. Well, what would you have told me? Ellie's smile softened as she settled at a nearby table, gesturing for Mason to join her. Seated beside her, he was all ears. After a moment of reflection, Ellie began to speak, her tone sincere. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Your kindness means a lot to me. Mason, however, was cognizant that his initial decision to hire her wasn't solely driven by benevolence. At the time, he had faced an urgent need for a gas station attendant. So, Ellie, care to share your story? He inquired, a note of bewilderment in his voice. I'm struggling to comprehend the transition from the person I first met to this remarkable presence in just a month. Ellie responded with a smile and posed her own question. Does the name George Harrison ring a bell? Mason furrowed his brow, deep in thought before responding. George Harrison, the billionaire behind the Harrison Inn chain. Yes, I'm familiar with him. What's his connection to all this? With a calm demeanor, Ellie disclosed, well, I'm actually his daughter. Mason was momentarily taken aback by the revelation. What? You're Paisley Campbell's daughter? The tycoon's kid, he exclaimed, struggling to process the information. Ellie confirmed with a nod and a smile, indeed I am. Leaning in, she continued her narrative. You see, about a year ago, my father and I had a catastrophic falling out. The reasons are complex, and in retrospect, rather frivolous. I was somewhat of a wild child, disinclined to conform to the person my father envisioned me becoming. At that time, I took many things for granted. Ellie's expression turned rueful as she recounted. I reacted impulsively, telling my father that I didn't need his support or his money. It was a moment of heightened emotions, and I never expected him to take my words seriously. However, he was deeply affronted by my defiance. Swiftly and decisively, he cut off all financial assistance. Mason listened intently as Ellie delved deeper into her story. Within days, I found myself in dire straits. The friends who had seemed so loyal vanished the instant my wealth disappeared. The initial months were agonizing, akin to a recovering addict enduring withdrawal. All my usual pastimes were suddenly beyond reach. My father gave me a month to secure a job and find my own place. His resolve remained unshaken. As Ellie recounted her journey, Mason reclined in astonishment, witnessing the stark transformation of events. The festive ambience of the party receded into the background as he hung on every word, his gaze fixed in anticipation of the unfolding narrative. That's how I found myself departing my parents' opulent abode, utterly clueless about my next step, Ellie continued. Having attended one of the nation's most esteemed private schools, her academic achievements had only ever been adequate to meet her father's standards. Her initial foray into the job market led her to a fast food establishment, where she secured a position as a janitor. It was in that moment that she grasped the sometimes formidable struggle to secure even the most basic employment. Gradually, Ellie's perspective shifted from her former rose-tinted worldview, realizing the potential for cruelty among people without rhyme or reason. Once accustomed to a life of perpetual celebration, she grappled with the revelation that her privileged existence had rendered her arrogant and disagreeable in others' eyes. The mere mention of her affluent background exacerbated this perception, despite her inherently kind and affable nature. Throughout her quest for work, Ellie gained another insight into human nature. She observed that some individuals treated the homeless with respect and compassion, recognizing their shared humanity. In a unique twist, Ellie found that seeking assistance as a homeless person could occasionally yield quicker results than her previous status. On certain occasions, people would hastily provide her with a coin, eager to alleviate her presence swiftly. Upon receiving her maiden paycheck from the fast food establishment, Ellie experienced an epiphany. She realized that her upbringing within her father's affluent household had, in an unexpected way, bestowed her with valuable life lessons. Unbeknownst to her, Ellie had unwittingly amassed a treasure trove of knowledge about customer service and the intricacies of fostering repeat business through her observations of her father. By the time she commenced her tenure at the gas station, a year had elapsed since her departure from her parents' abode. Embarking on a mission to establish her own hotel and restaurant enterprise, Ellie aimed to demonstrate her maturation to her father. This aspiration prompted her decision to seek employment at Mason's gas station. Ellie elucidated her initial goal, comprehending the ebb and flow of customers within the locality. She confessed to Mason that directly approaching someone of his stature with a business proposition would have been a formidable challenge. Thus, she endeavored to contribute to his enterprise before presenting her proposal. After a contemplative pause, Mason finally interjected, "You've certainly captured my attention. So, what exactly is your proposition?" Ellie's response was succinct and direct, "It's actually quite straightforward. This gas station is strategically positioned along a bustling highway, attracting numerous travelers seeking respite. My suggestion is to establish a modest hotel and restaurant here." As Ellie presented her proposal, Mason regarded her intently. A realization struck her: she had overlooked extending an apology for the initial misconceptions she may have inadvertently caused. "By the way," she interjected, "I apologize for any misimpression I might have conveyed during our initial encounter." In response to her apology, Mason offered a reassuring smile. "No need to apologize," he replied. "If you're willing to discuss your proposal, I believe there's potential to significantly expand our business." Ellie's sincerity shone through as she made her admission. Mason found himself taken aback by the genuineness of her revelation. "That's quite a remarkable insight into your character," he acknowledged, extending his hand. "Thank you," Ellie responded, accepting the gesture warmly. However, another question continued to puzzle Mason. "There's one more thing I'm curious about, Ellie," he inquired. "How did you manage to forge a friendship with Daniel? She's renowned for being challenging to connect with." Ellie launched into her explanation. "Well, I noticed that people had assumed Daniel was always in a sour mood and virtually impossible to engage with. This perception had solidified into her reputation, leading people to cease their attempts to interact with her. She continued, I decided to approach her differently, just to interact and genuinely listen. To my surprise, she turned out to be an intriguing individual. We had numerous conversations, and, believe it or not, she's even dating someone now." Throughout the evening, Mason found himself inexplicably drawn to Ellie, almost as if an instinct urged him to safeguard her from the rest of the crowd. He struggled to fathom why he felt such a powerful need to shield her. He had reassured her that there would be ample time to delve into business matters later. In the present, they were meant to savor the party. As the night unfolded, he found himself stealing glances at her more frequently, gradually realizing that maintaining a distance from her was becoming increasingly challenging. The arrival of dawn's golden hues on the horizon marked a departure from his usual habits. Despite typically rising late, Mason hopped into his car, driven by an unusual urge. With a clear destination in mind, Mason set out for the gas station. The events of the preceding night lingered vividly in his thoughts. Ellie's revelations and her subsequent proposal had ignited something within him. It wasn't merely the astonishment of her identity as Paisley Campbell's daughter or the remarkable transformation she had undergone. It was her ingenuity, determination, and resilience that had left an indelible impression on him. As he navigated through the awakening city, he contemplated the usual gamut of meetings, calls, and paperwork that constituted his daily routine. However, this morning was different. His singular focus was Ellie. Drawing closer to the gas station, he spied Ellie at her customary post. Despite the early hour, she was already immersed in her duties, a testament to her unwavering commitment. Her professional demeanor remained unchanged from the radiant, elegant figure who had commanded attention at the party mere hours ago. The stark juxtaposition between the two versions of Ellie was not lost on him. If anything, it deepened his admiration for her. Seated in his car, he watched Ellie diligently tending to the customers, a sense of certainty gradually enveloping him. In his mind's eye, he envisioned her as an authoritative presence, draped in a pristine dress and steering the course of their shared venture. His resolve was unwavering. Ellie had demonstrated not only her capacity to surmount personal challenges but also her potential to make a substantial impact on his business, injecting it with fresh perspectives and innovative concepts. Collaborating with Ellie proved to be immensely gratifying for Mason. Her motivations extended far beyond financial gain, a refreshing departure from the typical ethos prevalent in the business world. Having been exposed to opulence from a young age, Ellie harbored a perspective that deviated from the norm. Her ultimate goal wasn't rooted in financial triumph. Instead, her fervent focus lay in the creation and sustenance of a flourishing hotel and restaurant enterprise. Infused with contagious enthusiasm, her dedication remained steadfast. Every choice she made, every concept she brought forth, stemmed from a sincere aspiration to establish an establishment renowned for its excellence and impeccable service. Ellie's father, Owen Hill, possessed sagacity that belied his exterior demeanor. Though he might have seemingly allowed his daughter to venture on her own path, he vigilantly monitored her journey. He held an unobtrusive vigil over her whereabouts and undertakings. Yet, he consciously maintained a distance. Throughout the year, he observed her trials and triumphs from a distance, wrestling with an overwhelming urge to forsake his restraint and rush to provide solace and support. However, he recognized that Ellie was contending with her own inner struggles and navigating through profoundly challenging times. He understood that intervening might deprive her of the vital lessons she needed to internalize. In a manner reminiscent of his business acumen, he applied patience and allowed events to unfurl organically. Upon learning of Ellie's audacious plans to collaborate with Mason and establish a hotel and restaurant, a sense of relief washed over him. It was as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His daughter was maturing, assimilating the harsh teachings of life, and embarking on a trajectory toward becoming a triumphant entrepreneur. Witnessing Ellie's transformation from a carefree reveler into a tenacious businesswoman filled him with profound pride and contentment. The struggle they had endured had proven worthwhile. His daughter had discovered her true path. Mason found himself grappling with emotions that transcended the bounds of a conventional professional relationship. Unbeknownst to Ellie, a burgeoning affection for her was taking root within Mason, a concealed love that stirred within his heart. Uncertain of how to articulate his sentiments, he channeled them into safeguarding her well-being and offering his protection. His attentive actions occasionally teetered on the edge of excessive, surprising Ellie on more than one occasion. Ellie, on her end, attempted to convey an aura of neutrality, striving to appear untouched by any underlying romantic currents. Yet, she couldn't ignore the signals. Mason's ceaseless care and consideration indicated that he was far from indifferent to her. This stirred a sense of insecurity within her, blurring the distinct boundaries of their professional connection with subtle tints of personal fondness. In a mere 6 months, the boutique hotel and charming restaurant materialized in their entirety, poised for their grand unveiling. The date for the gala opening had been set, and an air of anticipation enveloped the surroundings. On one evening, just days prior to the momentous occasion, Mason and Ellie found themselves in the freshly minted restaurant, savoring cups of coffee brewed by the newly acquired machine. "Better than many cafes out there," Mason commented appreciatively. The choice of high-end Italian coffee machines had been Ellie's personal touch. Their conversation meandered seamlessly across various subjects, an effortless exchange of ideas regarding impending tasks and general operations. Nevertheless, Ellie exhibited a hint of restlessness, as if grappling to voice something of significance. As Mason's musings eventually waned, Ellie met his gaze with a look of intensity and gravity. Puzzled by her demeanor, he inquired, "Is something amiss?" She spoke bluntly, asserting, "You're not very skilled at concealing your emotions." Perplexed, he queried, "Pardon?" A heavy sigh escaped Ellie, accompanied by an eye roll, before she extended her hand across the table to lightly touch Mason's. His response was a slight start, taken aback by her audacity. Her ensuing smile reassured him, and she finally blurted out, "Aren't you going to ask me out already?" That evening heralded a new phase in the relationship between Ellie and Mason, transcending their professional alliance and evolving into a romantic involvement. For Mason, this shift presented initial challenges as he grappled to harmonize the image of his business associate with that of his romantic partner. Regardless of what she articulated, her words had the power to captivate him, leaving him in a mesmerized state, struggling to maintain his focus as he gazed at her. Through this evolution, Ellie adeptly retained her professional composure during working hours, revealing her softer side only beyond the realm of work. Just 2 days before the grand opening, Ellie decided to extend an invitation to her parents. From a modest Toyota sedan parked in front of their family home, Owen Hill observed his daughter with a sense of reassurance. His cherished child had truly transformed. Despite being able to afford a more lavish vehicle, she had chosen a mid-size sedan. "Mom? Dad?" Ellie entered the house, her face radiating warmth in a welcoming smile. Owen Hill, engrossed in reading his newspaper in the living room, looked up to see his daughter. "Hey, Dad. It's been a while. How have you been?" Owen Hill stood up, his face breaking into an affectionate grin. He approached Ellie and enveloped her in a heartfelt hug. After a moment of shared silence, he finally spoke, his voice slightly quivering. "I'm so sorry, baby girl." Ellie met her father's gaze, her eyes glistening with tears. The realization dawned upon her: her father had been well aware of her trials and whereabouts all along. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for imparting the most valuable lesson in my life." Then, she directed her gaze towards Mason, her smile radiant. "I assume you're already acquainted with your future son-in-law." Owen Hill turned to Mason, a playful glint in his eyes. "Well, I've done my part. Now it's your turn to either shed tears or celebrate with her. I'll simply sit back, relax, and await the arrival of my grandchildren." The grand opening proved to be an immense triumph. The ambience resembled that of a pre-wedding celebration. The hotel and restaurant operations hummed along smoothly. Despite the absence of an immediate influx of customers, neither Ellie nor Mason harbored any concerns. Immersed in her work and fervent commitment to the project, Ellie cherished every interaction with customers. In the initial weeks, she personally welcomed guests in the hotel lobby, guided them through a brief tour, and ensured they felt embraced and valued. At times, Mason found himself gazing at Ellie in sheer admiration. He pondered over the reasons for his profound blessings in life, for having this radiant and exceptional woman as his partner. Although he couldn't quite pinpoint the exact answer, it could be attributed to his enduring attitude of gratitude, maintained despite numerous challenges, including the heartache of growing up without parents. A year later, Ellie and Mason exchanged heartfelt vows. They opted for an intimate wedding, extending invitations solely to their nearest friends and family. Among the attendees was a radiant Henry Morgan. She had undergone a remarkable transformation, shedding significant weight and radiating a newfound self-assuredness that was impossible to overlook. Continuing her role as the manager of the gas station, a position she diligently fulfilled daily, she was accompanied by her boyfriend, a close confidant of Mr. George Harrison. At the wedding, she donned an elegant gown that exquisitely complemented her newfound poise. Her metamorphosis brought joy to all those who knew her, and as she radiated at the wedding, it was evident that she, too, had found contentment amid her transformative journey. Approaching Mason, Henry Morgan extended her congratulations with genuine warmth. "Congratulations. I'm so thrilled for both of you. You truly deserve all this happiness," she exclaimed. She began to walk away but hesitated, pivoting back towards Mason. A fleeting melancholy replaced her customary cheerfulness for a moment. "Thank you, Mason," her words were soft but profound, laden with sincerity. Then, as if a cloud had lifted, her smile returned, illuminating her features once again. Mason observed her retreating figure, his gaze holding a knowing depth. There was no need to decipher the intention behind her words, he understood them completely. Henry Morgan's gratitude was directed towards him for a very specific reason. As an orphan, Mason's upbringing had been marked by a longing for the embrace of family, the connection of blood relations. Ellie's parents had lovingly filled that void in Mason's life, welcoming him with open hearts and arms. They embraced him not just as their daughter's partner but as a son, enveloping him in unconditional love that radiated through every shared moment, meal, and interaction. Beyond being a simple love story, Ellie and Mason's journey encapsulated resilience, a determination to evolve through life's trials and challenges. Their tales showcased a woman who defied the constraints of her privileged upbringing and a man who discovered love and belonging in the most unexpected corners of life. Thank you for sharing in this narrative, for lending your ears and attention to this journey. I hope you found enjoyment and enlightenment within it. If you did, kindly express your appreciation with a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more narratives of a similar nature. Feel free to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments section below. Until next time, take care.